Welcome to Patreon exclusive Pop Culture Pete, Part 2, Poppin' My Peas. Part 2, today we're going to talk about monster movies. One of my favorite things ever.
Monster movies.
Monster movies.
Like Jason, Freddy.
No, those are people. I'm talking about giant building crashing radioactive monsters.
Not like the Mummy.
Maybe we'll get into that stuff.
Like Universal monster
talking about
movies?
like Brendan Fraser mummy or actual mummy?
Yeah, like Brendan Fraser Mummy.
Brendan Fraser mummy, meh.
Slash Tom
Universal
Cruise.
monsters, yeah. I'm talking about Toho. I'm talking about King Kong. I'm talking about Gamera. I'm talking about that stuff.
This is a topic I'm just not very well versed in.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people, I'm learning not a lot of people are, because basically there's 5 of us in here, and I'm the only one, I think, that knows anything about this.
Like Rampage. Did you see that one? Or are these old school?
Yeah, he's talking.
I'm talking old school.
I know he's talking old.
I'm
school.
talking old school.
If you want to talk about the 90s Godzilla movie,
We'll get to that.
I'm all about that. Other than that, I'm out.
We'll get to that. See, but you got to understand, this is like one of the first memories I have as a kid is, and none of you guys know this because you're all too young, but every Thanksgiving, old Channel 43, still around, I guess.
Yeah, WUAB.
used to show the original King Kong at 8 o'clock at night every Thanksgiving.
Wow.
And so every year, my sister and I would pull chairs into my parents' bedroom, and the 4 of us would sit there and we'd watch King Kong every year. That was just what we did. And I was like 6 years old.
You got like a year on the original King Kong?
1933.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But they replay it, yeah.
Yeah, they replay it. And it was actually probably before, because they remade it in 76, where he was on the World Trade Center. And I think it was probably the first time I saw it was probably before that.
Not to cut you off, but that's how I discovered a lot of the horror movies I like. Not on Thanksgiving, but Big Chuck and Little John.
Well, I was going to segue into that too, because
Glardy.
I don't know if you remember. You might not remember this guy. I don't know, but there used to be a guy again on WAB on Saturday afternoon called Superhost.
Okay, yeah.
And Superhost, and for some reason it seemed he would play like Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, or he would play, he'd play all these weird movies. And every year right around my birthday, for some reason, he would always play Son of Kong, and he would play a Godzilla movie. He'd have a double feature Saturday afternoon every year on birthday. So I would watch that too. And that's where I started to get into.
But yeah, like I think that's kind of one of the things that kind of sucks about modern television and just culture is I discovered so many things just on these localized, like for people that don't know, Big Chuck and Little John are like, they were like our local, like for lack of a better term, like monster movie hosts. But they wouldn't always show like horror movies, but for the most part they would, like Friday nights at like whenever the news was over, they would do like the studio segment, and then they would like host a double feature of movies,
skits, and
movies,
like B-movies, and they would show a lot of the Universal. They'd show like Creature from the Black Lagoon, and they would show the Wolfman.
And like when I was like younger, they were showing like Nightmare on Elm Street and things like that. But not to cut you off, like that's what's kind of I think unique about how culture was then compared to now is like you would discover these things as a child, and then like this is your thing forever.
This is my thing. Yeah, this is my thing. I mean, I remember watching King Kong, and I was like, wow, this is so cool, and this giant ape, and he's running around, and it's the guy that did it. I'm really a huge fan of the stop motion animation style that the guys used. They did that in other movies, like another guy took it in like Clash of the Titans and Sinbad and all this stuff. It's all this stop motion where you're double clicking poses and everything, and it takes forever to make, but it's amazing. But you have that, and then like the first, I'm trying to remember, and I think outside of maybe the original Godzilla, the first Godzilla movie that I can remember watching was, of course, the Jet Jaguar one, where it's Godzilla and the giant robot against Megalon, who's a cockroach, and Gigan, and it would have this huge fight at the end, and Jet Jaguar can make himself big, and he's this giant robot, and it's like cheesy beyond belief. But it's just like I saw this and I was totally fucking hooked on it because I was like, this is fucking awesome. I mean, it's terrible acting, everything's dubbed.
That's what I was gonna say. Like for
Yeah.
what I do know about Godzilla is they were made in like Japan and then they dubbed them, right?
Yeah, I mean they would make them over there. Well, I mean the very first one they made, and it's called Gojira. I think that's how it's pronounced. And then it was so big in Japan that they wanted to send it to America, so they changed the name to Godzilla, and they reshot scenes for Raymond Burr to pretend that he was like a newsman covering this giant creature destroying.
And they just make
Tokyo.
their own. They basically just make their own movie.
It was the same movie, but he was like spliced into it
to
make it
drive
look
the
like,
plot along.
well, to say Raymond Burr's in it, you know.
Okay.
And I mean, effectively, the whole thing is a commentary on nuclear war or the atom bomb, because that's how Godzilla was created. They're testing at, I believe, Bikini Island, I think it was, and they're testing. Yeah,
Okay.
they're testing these bombs, and this creature, you know, gets radioactive, and he turns into this giant lizard, and you know he wants to destroy. He comes out of the ocean, and he's angry, so he wants to destroy.
You saying Bikini Island? That made me think of another thing that I discovered lots of movies on.
Yes, Cinemax.
USA Up All Night with Rhonda Shear.
Yeah.
Oh,
The Bikini Car Wash Company.
Yes.
Yeah.
Edited for piece of cable.
So once I figured out that this thing existed and that there were movies, I wanted to watch as many of them as I could, because there was all these different movies. There was like, first they had Godzilla, then I think they may have done a couple of other Godzilla movies, but then they had Rodan, and Rodan came out, and I was like, oh, okay. And then Mothra came out, and then you get the great. Then they would fight each other.
This is all like the same studio?
Same
making
studio, Toho, yeah. And then King Ghidorah, the three-headed lizard, the ultimate bad guy, would come
Oh,
out.
yeah, I remember that
and
one.
then him and Godzilla would fight. And then there was one where the three of them fought him, and it's just all these random. There's some that are terrible, but there's a lot of them that are good. And as I mentioned before, I forget when, I like movies with a lot of characters and a lot of like backstories.
That's why you like
tournament movies, like
Yeah.
Bloodsport and Karate Kid and stuff like. I like to follow
Best of the Best.
the different. Yeah, I like that movie. I like to
Eric
follow
Roberts, baby.
Yeah, I like to follow the different storylines and learn about all these different characters. And so that's what the Godzilla thing is so cool. And every once in a while they'd have like these big mishmash movies where it was did one that was called oh man, what was it called? Was it All Out Monsters Attack, or one that was on Monster Island, and it had like every like there's like a giant spider and a giant snake and giant praying mantises and like all these just random giant creatures, you know. And he would fight them all, and they'd all show up, and it was just
Do they all become? Is the storyline that they all become giant based off the same like nuclear?
They really never the Godzilla thing is definitely because of that. I don't know if they ever delve in. I mean, Mothra might be the exception. Mothra's backstory is that he is the guardian of this island, and he's summoned by these little miniature twin Japanese girls that sing a song, and then Mothra comes, and Mothra somehow, it's a giant butterfly, but it lays an egg. I don't know.
It's not a moth.
Well, it turns into like this beautiful. It's a moth, but it has like really colorful wings, and so it looks like a giant butterfly. Because when it starts out, it's a little larva thing, and it just crawls around, and then it goes
Caterpillar.
Yeah, well, it's larva.
Okay.
And then it goes into
Photosynthesis.
cocoon. No, goes into a cocoon. That's
plant.
plants. Goes into a cocoon and becomes this, giant.
I saw Cocoon.
Colorful moth, and they made a ton of those movies because Mothra is the ultimate baby face. Mothra is always like trying to quote unquote talk to all the other ones to get him to fight on the good side and everything else. Godzilla's kind of like Big Show. He's turned babyface and heel.
Flip-flops?
Yeah, he goes back and forth a ton.
But these characters don't talk.
They don't talk, but they communicate by like
You could follow
they
it.
pantomime stuff, or they'll do things.
Like, come to the good side.
Yeah, well, they'd be like the people would be like, oh, Mothra is trying to convince Godzilla to join him, and it's just like Mothra's just there, and he's like flapping his wings or something like that, and Godzilla just shakes his head, and you're like, oh, okay, that means that they're cool now.
When I see these movies, I always think of the scene in Pee-wee's Big Adventure
Yeah,
It's
when
like
he drives
he's
through,
riding
he
his
drives through the
bicycle through
bike
it,
through the
yeah.
town. But yeah, I mean, you have all of those, and then of course you have the bastardized giant turtle Gamera, which I forget what studio he came from, but he was in like the 70s.
Is it an offshoot?
It was a rival studio, I believe.
This, according to this, he's also Toho.
Is he Toho?
Yeah.
I thought it was a rival studio because like they only made a handful of those movies, and the thing about it was he was a giant turtle that could fly. He like pulled all of his arms and legs in, and somehow had like jet engines in his body, and fire would shoot out where his legs were, and he would just spin around and fly.
Okay.
The
And
super monster.
He would fight. He fought this one thing with like a big shark fin head, and those were weird movies. Not that the Godzilla movies aren't weird, but those are weird movies. But watching the progression of the Godzilla over the last 50 years is interesting because
They're still making Godzilla movies.
yeah, but it was because he first he was it was just a movie. They just made this movie about this giant lizard to say negative things about nuclear activity and stuff like that. And then it turned into this whole frickin' universe of monsters. And then it became, well, we'll make them for the kids. And then it became like real cheesy and corny. And so you try to get kids to come to the theater. And then and then in the 70s, it was Mechagodzilla and a lot of space aliens and stuff like that. And then it kind of disappeared for a while. And then in the 80s, they went real hardcore, like kind of a little more violent. And then in the 90s, it's changed. It's always changing. Like they'll make like 4 or 5 or 6 movies, and then it'll switch approaches, and so they'll try to reinvent.
They only made the Matthew Broderick one, right, in the 90s?
98.
That's the only one they made in the 90s? Or
No. They made a handful in Tokyo.
Okay, but that's just like the big American studio one, Matthew Broderick
Yes,
one.
and it is despised more than I could believe by everyone that has an ounce of Japanese DNA in their body.
That soundtrack is sweet, though.
They cannot I don't like the movie myself. I've seen it a bunch of times. I saw it at the theater, of course. I mean, I've seen it a bunch of times. I couldn't figure out why it rained in every scene. I don't know why it was always raining the entire movie. That I couldn't figure out. The Madison Square Garden thing with all the little mini Godzillas where he laid a bunch of eggs.
It just turned into like Jurassic Park. That's what it felt like.
I didn't follow that at all. I mean, seeing the thing for the first time and watching it run through the city and do its destruction, that part was okay. But I mean, if you follow it at all, they insult him, that Godzilla, in a handful of Japanese Godzilla movies. In the one movie that's awesome, that is one of the best Godzilla movies I've ever seen, it's called Final Wars. It's the one with Don Fry that I always mention to you because his sweet mustache is in it.
Just hit him up on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you should book him. He's awesome.
I'm trying.
And they have this thing where these aliens bring Godzilla. They bring him from space, or they resurrect him. I'm sorry, from he's sleeping. He's like in hibernation, and they resurrect him, and they send all the monsters. All this alien race sends every Godzilla monster in the universe after Godzilla, and they call him Zilla. They don't call him Godzilla; just call him Zilla. They send him to Sydney, Australia, because Godzilla's in Sydney, Australia, to fight him, and Godzilla beats him in like 3 seconds and like drops
Squashes him,
and runs. Yeah, squashes him, and the Japanese guys, the aliens, are just like, oh, well, he sucks. He's terrible. That was a waste. Like, they just shit all over him. It's great. But that's one of my favorite Godzilla movies, because it has my favorite character. My favorite Godzilla character is a lesser known creature who is a protector of an island, and he lives in a mountain. And he has a song too that this girl has to sing to wake him up. And when she wakes him up, the whole mountain explodes.
What's this one called?
His name is King Caesar. He's a giant dog.
Okay.
And he's a giant dog that he's like runs on 2 legs. He's got like big floppy dog ears and stuff. And he comes out of the mountain. And I actually have my friend a couple years ago when we were at Comic-Con bought me a figure of him. I have it in my kitchen.
Could you sing a portion of the song for us?
I could, but I'd break the microphones because it's really high.
You know, it amazes me how much detail you know about these topics,
dude. This is my shit. I mean, now if you want me to go into King Kong, I love King Kong.
It's your show.
King Kong is not my favorite ape movie, by the way. Mighty Joe Young is actually my favorite ape movie.
Okay.
Is Mighty Joe Young remade?
Not the remake. Not with Charlize Theron. No, the original from the 40s, where Mighty Joe Young is like this 15-foot ape that they kidnap from Africa and bring him over. It's kind of the same concept as King Kong, where they put him in a show. He doesn't know what the fuck's going on. He's like in a cage when he's not working, and he busts out of the cage, and everyone's all freaked out and everything else. Like, oh my god, we got to stop him. And Mighty Joe Young actually is running away and sees an orphanage on fire, and he goes and saves all the orphans from the fire, and I think he dies in the fire at the end. I'm not sure.
Well, that's tragic.
But yeah, it's awesome though. It's fucking great. But King Kong is amazing. The 76 remake with Jeff Bridges and Charles Grodin and the girl Faye Dunaway? No, Jessica Lange. What am I thinking? It's Jessica Lange.
I don't know.
And
can't believe you mistaken.
I don't really like that one very much.
The only King Kong movie I saw was the most recent one, Skull Island,
that's amazing.
Which is good. And also,
I did see that. Yeah.
Also, they have a ride at Universal based on it, and it is fucking amazing.
But the Peter Jackson remake from 2005 is actually
Jack Black.
It's actually a shot-for-shot remake of the original, because they cut out a bunch of shit from the original, like the part where they all. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie, but there's a part where they're all on a log, like crossing a canyon.
Yeah.
And there's a log, and there's like a bunch of dudes on it, and King Kong comes up to the log, and he's like shaking the log, and they're all falling off, and he pushes the log off, and they fall down. When they go down, all those bugs, those giant bugs, that was all in the original, but they cut it out. They cut it out, and then the whole scene with the brontosauruses when they're running, they cut that out. So they cut out a bunch of shit from the original, but he shot the whole fucking thing like it was supposed to be done,
like how they did it originally.
Yeah.
Does he do Skull Island as well? Is that Peter Jackson?
No.
Okay.
But that movie is really good because it really makes you like. I actually felt bad for him at the end. Like
King Kong.
Yeah, I felt bad because he was just kind of hanging out with the chick and he was just doing nothing and he got shot. You know, and everyone was like, "Oh, that sucks." But Skull Island is.
I like
awesome.
that.
It's awesome.
And if you're ever in Orlando, Florida, hit that ride.
I was supposed to go last year, but I didn't get a chance to go.
It's pretty sweet, and like they have like just the production value of the ride. It's like there's like fire, and it's like you're going into this mountain, and then it's like the actual ride is like all like 3D stuff once you get in, but it's pretty cool.
But the movie itself, I thought, was really well done, and then. I assume you watched the end credits. Did you see the end credits where they set up the Godzilla movie that's coming out in May?
I did not.
Did you see the Godzilla movie?
No.
Okay. Well,
maybe I did. Is that with is Walter White in that?
Yeah, the Godzilla movie's set current time. The King Kong movie is set in the mid 70s.
Okay.
So what you find out at the end of King Kong? Spoiler alert! What you find out at the end of King Kong is the company that went to capture King Kong or to whatever knew about all these other monsters because they found these cave paintings of Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan, and Ghidorah. And so they're like, oh, he's not alone. There's more of these things. And then the next Godzilla movie that comes out is going to be the four of them fighting each other. And then it's already done filming. March of 2020 is King Kong versus Godzilla. In that universe.
So, but there's something coming out this year?
May 31st.
And what's that?
Godzilla King of the Monsters, I believe.
Okay.
Which is
I didn't know King Kong was in the same universe.
He's in the same universe, yeah.
Okay.
So the four big ones and there may be other secondary monsters in it. I don't know. They haven't really shown them. But the four big ones are going to be in this one, and they're just going to...
The big names?
Yeah, they're just going to fight.
Oh, so you'll be seeing that.
I'll be probably first in line.
Were any of the monsters?
I don't know about that. I can't do midnight anymore. I know.
I'm so tired of seeing that fucking trailer though.
What?
Dude,
how could you be tired of that?
That trailer has been on every movie I've seen for the last 5 months. I've
only seen it once. I saw it.
I don't think I've seen it.
What was the last movie I saw?
Every
Captain Marvel.
AMC. Every AMC movie, it is on
No,
there.
I saw Captain Marvel.
So tired of it.
I saw Captain Marvel, and I almost walked out of Captain Marvel because I was satisfied that I saw
I haven't gone to the movies in a while, so I've not seen it.
Movie past Dom's seen every trailer probably like 19 times at this point.
AMC Stubbs A-list member, Dom. Movie Pass is dead effectively.
Oh, A-list. He's A-list. All right.
I don't see enough movies. To
Are any of the other, because there's other monsters on Skull Island in Kong Skull Island?
Those monsters, that's kind of like if you saw the Godzilla movie, they were created specifically for that movie to give...
Okay.
Like the reason why those monsters are in that movie, and they're kind of like the same things that were in the Godzilla movie, but not really. But Kong needed a backstory. They needed to understand why they shouldn't kill him, because he was actually protecting his species was protecting the people of the island against
those
other monsters. So that's kind of why they were there.
Okay, they're just there to serve the purpose of him in that movie. They're not...
Yeah, because in the original Kong and the remake, all it was him walking around, and like a Tyrannosaurus would get in his face and they'd fight, or whatever. So there wasn't really any reason for him to be
backstory at all.
He was just a god. In the original King Kong, he was a god they worshipped and sacrificed people to, and whatever else. In this one, he was more of a protector, savior type thing. So
what other monster movies you got?
oh man, I mean, if you want to talk about the Universal ones, I didn't really get into those too much. I mean, I liked them all. I liked them all. I enjoyed. I'm disappointed that the attempt to bring them back fell flat.
What hard?
The Tom Cruise Mummy movie from a couple years ago. That was supposed to be
bringing them
That
back.
was supposed to be the kickoff.
That wasn't like a Brendan Fraser mummy. That was like the
No, that was the mummy in that one was a woman, and it was Tom Cruise and Russell Crowe, I think, was in it.
Yeah, Russell Crowe was in it.
And they were supposed to. That was supposed to be the kickoff of them redoing all the other.
Wasn't Johnny Depp rumored to be one of the monsters?
Probably. I mean, yeah, it was
Dracula.
It was going to be a big deal, and I guess I didn't see it. I guess it didn't do very well.
I didn't see it either.
But I mean, like when you talk about monster movies, like I really, really, really liked Van Helsing.
Oh yeah,
that was good.
Big fan of that.
That had pretty much all of the Universal monsters in it.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
I love it.
I love that movie.
We'll get
that's
to
a
that
good
in a
one,
second.
too.
But when you have Van Helsing, because you had the great character of Van Helsing, and then you had Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde at the beginning, and then
Yeah.
you had the Wolfman, who is him, and spoiler alert, and other people, and Dracula and Frankenstein. I thought stole that movie. I thought
Oh
the
yeah, Frankenstein was amazing.
The Frankenstein character had a lot of depth and a lot of emotion and things like that. And the opening scene of Dr. Frankenstein being killed and being in the old laboratory with all the shock things going in between the coils and all the other. I mean, it was like old school science.
I haven't seen that in a long time. I know
It's
that
great.
I know I
It
saw
is
it in the
great.
theater.
Yeah,
but
so did I.
I don't know what that came
I saw
out
that in the
a
theater
while
too.
ago.
I saw that
Yeah,
like 2005,
5 maybe.
earlier than that.
it was like
Was it?
2002.
Yeah.
Was it that early?
It was a long time ago.
I remember I saw it in the theater, but I saw it in Dayton. So yeah, I guess it makes sense because I probably was in college at the time.
But that puts
Drove
them
to
all.
Dayton with
That
my
puts
brother.
them all together, and that means I'm going to like it because they're all in the movie. But
That was like the most humanized version of.
Frankenstein was awesome.
Frankenstein
he was
you've ever
great
seen.
in that movie. Yeah.
And I mean, Kate Beckinsale in there doesn't hurt you either. You know?
No, but yeah, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is that's not
See,
really
I've
a
never
monster
seen
movie,
that.
but that's
Yeah, that's not a
that's
monster
more of a
movie.
comic book movie. But that's from what I gather, they really really cleaned it up for the movie. Like Mr. Hyde was like way worse in the comic book.
Yeah.
And the Invisible Man used to go into, like he went into a girls' school and raped like a bunch of the girls because he was invisible, and so I think they caught him in the comic book, and that's why he joined up with these guys to like get out of. Yeah,
That's a little heavy.
yeah. So they didn't put that in the comic book or in the movie. Sorry.
That's probably a good idea.
Like you like monster movies. Where are you at on horror movies? You like?
I don't do well with horror movies. I mean, I've
It has to be like the larger than life over
I
the
just
top
like because
monster.
I don't. Okay, horror movies. When I was a kid, my dad really liked horror movies, and I was afraid of everything. When I was like 5, 6, 7 years old, whatever, and so he used to use that
Oh, okay.
against me, and try to freak me out. Like, some of the things he used to do was, remember Salem's Lot?
Yes.
Did you guys watch that miniseries? Well, when it was out, it was on like the late 70s.
It's still out.
Where
Like, you could still watch it. As
The
a
gimmick
movie.
is one of the kids becomes a vampire, and
It's a Stephen King thing, right?
yeah, it's a Stephen King book, and you have to invite a vampire.
Yeah,
to your house.
that's like a vampire lore.
And so there's a scene where the kid is flying outside of his friend's window, and he's scratching on the window to get in, and the kid's all freaked out, and then I think he ends up letting him in. But that was one of the things my dad would do. Like, we're watching it, and he would go outside of our house and scratch on the bedroom window, and stuff. Or like, we're watching The Exorcist one day, and
Now that movie's terrifying. Still.
yeah, and he wrote like "help me" on his stomach or something. I mean, he was just. My dad used to get a kick out of it because he used to love all of that shit. Like, he would always want to watch horror movies, and I just I didn't get into them at all because that was when they were first came out, I was real young. Like, a lot of those came out, like the first ones came out in like the late 70s.
Yeah.
Halloween, which I've never seen. I've never actually seen the original Halloween.
I could let you borrow it.
I've seen most of the Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Just
I mean, they've played those on TV.
I've seen half probably Nightmares. I forget what else. Like
Child's Play.
Running. I've never seen any of those. But we used to rent random horror movies that my dad would like. I saw Shocker. I saw a couple other ones.
Peter Berg.
Shit like that. And it's just like, all right, whatever. But that was always my thing. It was always every birthday I could watch my Godzilla movies or my monster movies, and now they'll play them on every 4th of July. El Rey plays like a marathon of them or something like that.
Did you with the more recent monster movies, and they try to bring them back? Did you ever see that Dracula Untold that came out?
No, the last Dracula I saw was Bram Stoker's Dracula in
like 92,
95 or 94.
Yeah, I think it's the early 90s.
Early 90s. Yeah.
That was the last one I saw, and I actually don't mind that story. I mean, I like that story. I've seen a lot of
Gary Oldman, I think, is
yeah.
I've seen a lot of Draculas, and I've seen a lot of Dracula spoofs. I've seen.
Where you seen a Bela Lugosi?
Once Bitten. I've seen
Jim Carrey.
Yeah, it's a great
I just watched that recently.
I've seen Leslie Nielsen's
Dracula Dead and Loving It.
Yeah,
it's fantastic. Of course, I just watched Once Bitten.
Were you at the Lost Boys?
I've never seen it.
Oh,
that's probably my ultimate vampire movie.
I love Lost Boys.
I haven't seen 28 or 28
Days later.
Days of Night or whatever.
30 Days a Night.
With
30
Josh,
Days a Night,
with Josh Hartnett.
That's a good one.
I've heard that's good. I haven't seen it.
Interview with a Vampire.
I've seen that. I've seen the Brendan Fraser mummy movies, which I don't mind.
What about you? Like Bela Lugosi as Dracula?
Oh yeah,
old time. That used to scare the shit out of me. When I was a kid.
Because I also like Bela Lugosi from like the Ed Wood stuff.
Oh yeah, okay.
Here's something that will probably get you going. What about Vincent Price?
Oh, Vincent Price is fucking the man. I mean, Vincent Price isn't a monster movie guy. He's a suspense horror guy,
right?
Like, not so much horror, because he did all the Edgar Allan Poe, like Fall of the House of Usher, and he probably did Telltale Heart. If they made
I'm sure he did them all.
Yeah, if they made movies out of him, he did them because he's amazing, and he does a great reading of The Raven. I love that dude. Yeah.
Did Rob Zombie do a Dracula movie?
Yeah.
Dracula?
I think he did.
No.
I got one for you.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about off the rails about horror movies and spoofs and stuff, have you seen Saturday the 14th?
I have not, but I know that Tom Arnold is in it, right?
Richard Benjamin is the main star. That's the only thing I can remember.
I'm pretty sure Tom Arnold's in it. No, I hate spoof movies.
And if you want to see a good slasher spoof movie, watch Student Bodies.
Okay.
It's from like 1980.
I've heard of it.
It's hilarious.
It's
got like body counts in it and stuff.
The best spoof that I've seen, it's not really spoof, but it's like very like self-aware, is this movie called Behind the Mask. And it's like this guy that's like trying to tape himself to become like a serial killer.
I've seen it. Yeah.
Is that
the one where he goes to the girl, spoiler alert, the girl turns out to be the survivor because she's never had sex?
I don't remember.
They go to like a library, and
I know that there's a library.
She's filming him killing somebody like for practice, and his his mentor is like a famous serial killer.
Yeah, it's Freddy. It's the guy that played Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah,
So like that's pretty good. But
I enjoyed that movie.
I hate spoof movies though. I do. Like, I don't know why. Like, I just think it's just like such easy like dumb comedy.
Sometimes, yeah, but when you're young, and,
I'm sure that there's some. I'm sure that there's some good ones, but like
Student Bodies is a classic. It's really
like
good.
I like some of like the self-aware stuff, and like there's a lot like now there's a lot more of that stuff coming out. You know, to where it's like all these like independent horror movies, kind of like are. I subscribe to this service called Shudder, and it's like just like a horror movie service, and like you'll be able to like find some stuff like that on there. I can't think of the one I just watched, but I really liked it. It was like this guy he ends up being like the killer, but he doesn't know he's the killer, and he's like calling his friend like it has the fucking trumpet girl from American Pie is like the main girl in it.
Oh, Allison
Hannigan.
Yeah.
Okay. But like getting back to like the monster movie stuff, I go back and forth. Sometimes I like the guy in the suit. Sometimes I like the CGI. Like the dude in the suit sometimes is pretty cool.
Yeah.
When it's done right.
CGI also when it's done right.
CGI works obviously when you're talking about a 300-foot tall lizard. Yeah,
Right.
okay, CGI is pretty cool because there's a lot more stuff you can do with them. But guy in the suit sometimes is a nice old school touch. You know, you got
last thing before like we wrap it up. Where do you put the Jurassic Park movies? Do those classify as monster movies?
Ooh, good question.
No. Well, okay. Here's the thing. I like most of those movies. And the reason why I do is probably for the same reason that I like monster movies is because when I was a kid, I really liked dinosaurs. I was a big dinosaur honk when I was a kid. And so you had those...
Spoiler episode coming up, Dinosaur Pete.
I'm all about that.
I mean, you want to talk about dinosaur movies like from the 50s, like Valley of Gwangi and a lot of like older monster movies, stuff like Creature from 20,000 Fathoms and stuff like that. Those are all like straight just giant dinosaurs.
Is Ross your favorite Friends character?
No. So that's why I was super excited when they were making Jurassic Park, and it's kind of the same thing, but they actually existed, so it's not the same thing.
I mean,
those are more just sci-fi adventure type movies, I guess. But you know, when you got the King Kong, or I just touched on the Valley of Gwangi. Now I'm thinking about that. I love that movie. But you got those old 50s and 60s, just straight dinosaur movies like that, like those type of movies, or 1,000 Years BC or stuff like that. Or there's a ripoff of King Kong from the mid 70s called the Gargantuans, and it's a brown one and a red one, furry, and they just walk around eating people. And all you see is like these pile of clothes every time they eat somebody because they don't eat the clothes. But it's just like these two just giant apes. It's like a total ripoff.
I know. I know you're like a man of cable, but if you ever become a cord cutter, there's like all these just streaming channels for free that you can get like on your Roku box or whatever, and they just have shit tons of these movies just available for you to just watch whenever you want.
Yeah.
Like there's like every fucking monster movie available. You could like install some channel and just watch them for free.
That would be cool.
There's tons and tons because
there's a lot. They, for some reason, every time they do a marathon, there's like 10 that they show.
Yeah,
and they don't show them all.
But these like have like the obscure like what I call like drive-in type movies.
Well, yeah, like the Gargantuans would be in that vein. Or Gwangi, or something like that, or Beast of 20,000 Fathoms, or
I was thinking of Dracula 2000. I don't know if you saw that. It wasn't Rob Zombie, but it was like
John Carpenter, I think.
Yeah, John Carpenter.
But it was like Pantera and
John
Slayer
Carpenter
were all
made
on the
some
soundtrack.
really amazing monster movies as well. Like he did The Thing, which is
okay. The Thing. I love The Thing.
Is really good. Did you ever see the original?
No. I like.
My dad was a huge fan of the original, and it stars James Arnaz, who's like this just big hulking actor, and he's the Thing. So it's not anywhere close to the heads falling off and the spider legs coming out and all that other stuff.
I love The Thing. I love Kurt Russell. Big Trouble in Little China. Where do you put that in?
again, I always go back to this shit I watched with my dad. He really liked that movie. I did
loved
not.
it.
I love it.
I love that movie.
Love it.
I did not.
This isn't really like a monster movie, though.
No.
There's some
It's
monsters in it.
supernatural.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Supernatural.
But it just he for some reason liked it. But the thing is a really good movie.
I love the thing.
But that will qualify as a monster movie.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up. Any final?
Go see King of the Monsters on May 31st, and at the next AIW show, you guys come up to me and talk about it if you want, because I'll probably have seen it 3 times by then. So,
All right. Well, this is Pop Culture Pete, episode 2.
see you next time.